Brimstone and Lily Chapter 3, already in progress. It felt hot as Hades in the stuffy theater. All the gas lamps and limelight seemed to double the temperature. It made me real glad I didn't have to wear any of the heavy costumes Maud made for the actors. My union suit and overalls had me sweating enough without adding velvet to it all. The boots they forced me to wear whenever I worked in the theater, Mr. Ford's rules, chafed my toes something awful. Bare feet are ever so much better in summer. I started to count the minutes till I'd be free of this torture. The play started, and Booth chose to have his actors perform the opening battle scene while the sergeant described it. That sure took my mind off of the heat. Watching swords and shields crash into one another, I moved in my little corner as if on stage myself, weapon on hand. Johnny Lee Harper, the actor playing Macduff, had planned out all the fight moves. A lot of them seemed too repetitive to my eyes, nothing like what real soldiers might do. I began to wish that I'd been allowed to swing a sword in this play, then they'd see something. Be careful what you wish for, the old saying goes. You might just get it. My first scene change came up after that. I placed my bench and retreated back to the corner. There it is, I thought, my glamorous career in show business. Need a chair moved? Call Verity. Artificial shrub placement? I'm your girl. Carry a flat and lash it to another one? That's so fair, kid's a whiz-bang at that. No wonder I started to daydream between scenes, inventing stories that me and Eddie could act out later. Lady Macbeth, Emily Thatcher, poked me in the ear. I about jumped to the moon. It took both hands over my mouth to not let out a holler. If an opium-addled over-the-hill ingenue had surprised you, could you do any better? She whispered she hadn't intended to scare me, but could I go and find Banquo? He'd be on in 2 minutes, and nobody'd seen him. She added that a delivery of props that day had filled the basement with hazards, so I should watch myself. Sighing, I set off on my next grand adventure. I expected to find him down in the basement again, rutting with witch number 2. Haven't seen cows do the same on our Maryland farm. I couldn't see the attraction. Seemed downright undignified to me, especially in that heat. But all the grown-ups seemed to think it great sport, so there must be something to it. I reminded myself to find Eddie and get the lowdown on what Silky Sadie had said to him. The stairs tended to squeak, so it took a long time to get down them. I had to walk on the sides and tiptoe, candle in one hand, the other hand on the rail. Behind me I could hear Booth booming out a speech, but the basement walls muffled the words. My candle made really spooky shadows on the wall, like goblins dancing. Smells of sawdust, mold, and cat poo tingled the nose. The dark didn't normally scare me much, but something in Ford's basement always got to me. It felt for all the world like something old and weird lived down there. At the bottom, I took a look around. A round gray mouse crawled out from under a pile of boxes and looked at me like I owed him a toll. Plump little Ernie, well, that's what I called him. He always patrolled there. For some reason, the theater cast wouldn't go near him. I just ignored the little guy and kept moving, not being one of those girls who jump on chairs when rodents show up. The walls looked dirty but cool. Cobwebs covered them, but I couldn't see any spiders. I spotted the maintenance closet just ahead. It held spare parts for rigging, oil for lubricating hinges, toils for fixing anything that might break. A cot in there set for the handyman to use if he needed a nap after a long day. I pictured Gus Shepherdson, our Banquo, showing Daisy Melville, his witch, just how handy he was with tools. Yuck. Tapping lightly on the door got me no answer. I rapped a little harder. No light showed beneath the door, but that didn't show much, considering the circumstances. I gritted my teeth. Darn these fool actors. Though tempted to leave them both there to face the wrath of Booth and Mr. Ford for missing their entrance, my hand grabbed the door handle and yanked. It screeched open and I jabbed the candle in. Nobody home. With a roll of my eyes at the wasted trip, I turned around to go back up. Looking to my right, I noticed all sorts of new stuff. Lady Macbeth had been right in saying that a delivery cluttered things up. Just a quick glance showed me baskets, picture frames, old makeup tables with busted mirrors, teapots, a moose head, even a harpoon. Turning to the steps, the candlelight revealed something shiny in a far corner to my right. A full suit of armor. Boy, howdy! Never noticed that before. Must have just arrived today. Picking my way carefully over packing crates, under false trees, and through a maze of other assorted stage junk, I made it to the antique. Somebody had painted it in gold, most likely for a long-dead play. It even had a fancy leather belt around its shiny waist. No sword, though. Oh well, can't have everything. The tap told me that I felt real iron, not plaster or some other pretend material. It looked very old, maybe even as old as King Arthur. They said that nights were short back in the olden days, and this suit made me believe it. I could just about wear it. Maybe tomorrow I'd sneak back down and have Eddie help me try it on. Verity the Valiant, savior of mankind. Backing up to admire it better, I discovered the floorboard beneath my right foot was probably as aged as Camelot too. It groaned and gave way, sending me straight down like a condemned man dropping through a gallows trapdoor. I only fell about 8 feet, but it felt like 80. Crashing through the pitch black, I didn't know where the bottom would be. Ending up on my rump, I sat there panting from the surprise. Quick check told me nothing seemed hurt much. Due to some miracle, the candle lay within its arm's reach and still burned. I grabbed it and held it up to see how I could get out of my predicament. I knew I stood below the basement, of course. That meant that I must have landed in some old root cellar or the foundation of a building that predated the Baptist church. Turning in a slow circle, I saw that the walls of this new space were cut from solid stone, carved smooth by someone a long time ago. I spied no door, so the original entrance had to have been from above. But I made out no steps, neither. This might have been made of wood and been removed. Is this some ancient Indian temple, maybe? I couldn't make out any of their markings. What then? There's no furniture, no paintings, nothing at all. Just a bare stone room. And how could I manage to get out of it? Since it appeared that I might be stuck there until somebody came down to the basement to hunt for me, I decided to take a look around. It paced out at maybe 20 feet square. Though the walls were solid and smooth, cut from living rock, the floor wasn't. Its designer had inlaid big tiles, but like no tiles I'd ever seen. Not square, but odd-shaped. In fact, they looked just like my legacy stone. Huh! I breathed out loud. I squatted down and held the candle close to the floor. Hard to tell in the sputtery yellow light, but it took the tiles made of the same red stuff as my stone, too. Huge arrow-shaped blocks of solid red jasper 2 yards across. They even had the same hole in the center. What on earth is this? I crawled all around the room, looking at every tile, identical, with something like marble filling in the joints between them. And every tile faced the same direction, with the point of the arrow facing one particular wall, angled so they aimed at a single spot. I scooted up to it and gave it a look. Faint carvings crawled across it in an alphabet I'd never seen before. The letters looked a little bit like Viking runes I'd spied in a history book once, but no, not exactly the same. More swirly than Norse runes. I noticed something else as I stood there. My legacy stone burned a hole in my chest. Grabbing the cord from around my neck with a yelp, I yanked the whole necklace off and held it out. The stone glowed. A dullish reddish light came from deep inside it like a beaker of blood on a sunny windowsill. Worse, the letters on the wall began to do the same thing, shining out from the surface as if they'd been heated in a forge. Okay, Verity, you hit your head when you fell, and this is some crazy dream. You have those all the time, don't worry. Things get even spookier when the letters on the wall began to move. I shrieked. Yep, like a girl. I admit it, right there in front of the world. The only other time I'd ever made that sound was when Eddie dropped a wriggling slug down my back. My heart bass drummed, my head answered with a banshee solo. Not good. I preferred a dream I could wake up from, not this overheated nightmare. Just as I started to holler for help, not caring whether it interrupted the dress rehearsal or not, the letters stopped moving. They rearranged themselves into a shape that I knew well, one that I could understand. A sword. The same fiery molten iron color as the letters that formed it, the sword had a yard-long, single-edged, recurved blade that swelled out a little bit toward the end, looking like a willow leaf with a wicked point. Its crossbar swirled in an S-curve and twisted like a vine. At the end of the handle, the large pommel, sort of resembling an acorn, seemed as big as my fist. The whole thing still clung to the wall, the way you see old relief carvings in museums. But somehow I just knew that if I grabbed it, I could snatch it right off. Real smart, Verity. Put your hand on a red-hot piece of steel. Dream or not, that'll hurt. Only a lunatic would try that. So I did. It didn't feel raging lava hot, but warm like bathwater. The grip seemed to be birch bark, but felt like supple leather. No, not leather. Skin. Human skin. I yanked my hand back as if it had been burned after all. Glancing down, I saw that my palm looked fine. My imagination must have been affected by the fall, the tiles, the letters. And now I could smell a tangy odor. Easy to recognize because everyone in Washington spent the summer with it. Sweat. a person's sweat. Even from somebody who worked hard in a small space, like in a stone cavern under the ground. To top it all off, I felt a buzzing vibration. At first I thought it lay under my feet or in the wall. Soon I understand that it just was. It came from everywhere around me at once, like the very air I breathed throbbed from a close lightning strike. I started to have trouble thinking straight. This must be what the grown-ups feel when they're drinking whiskey. Fearing that I might faint, I grabbed the sword again. This time I ignored every sensation and clenched my fist around the sword hilt. With a wrench, I hauled the glowing weapon free of the wall and crashed backward onto the tiles. Oh. Lying flat on my back, I could see the candle had gone out. I could see that in what should have been total darkness. Oh, this is a much better dream than the ones I usually have. Not only that, I could hear the Macbeth actors reciting their lines upstairs as if I stood right beside them. Before now, the stone chamber blocked all sound. I could also make out a slithering sound like a snake on the move. My new sword, now a three-dimensional steel and gold object, had stopped glowing. It had no more weight to it than a silk handkerchief. Its grip felt exactly like I held the hand of a living person. I could even feel its pulse. Most upsetting of all, the blade had curled around my neck, so the point stared at me like a spitting cobra about to strike. "Hey, Verity," said the sword in a pleasant, cheerful voice.